You have found your way back, wanderer. Let the noise of the living hours fall away. The hours ahead belong to something older, to the long, unhurried dark where history breathes, and the only voice is mine. Tonight, I have been waiting for you. In the quiet, we begin. Tonight, we go somewhere different. Not to Rome, not to the marble-paved Forum, or the sun-warmed columns of the ancient Mediterranean. Tonight, we leave the warm south behind entirely. We turn north. We go up, past the forests and the fjords, and the grey winter coastlines where men once dragged their longships above the tide line and sat by their fires and told each other stories that explained everything. The thunder, the stars, the cold, the reason why the world was shaped the way it was, and the reason they believed that it would one day end. These are the stories of the Norse, of the people who built their understanding of existence, not from sun-drenched philosophy or the rational architectures of Rome and Greece, but from something rawer, something closer to the bone, a cosmology born of ice and darkness and the particular ferocity of northern winters, softened by the warmth of the hearth and the astonishing tenderness with which human beings have always, in every culture, tried to make sense of their own brief lives. Before there was light, there was ice, and there was fire, and between them, nothing but a yawning empty void called Ginnungagap. No stars, no earth, no gods, no time. Only the slow, patient meeting of frost and flame at the edge of everything. And from that meeting, something stirred. In the Old Norse tongue, they called it the beginning. We might call it the first morning the universe ever had. Tonight, we go back to it. We will begin before the beginning, in the void itself, in the dark between worlds, before there were worlds to speak of. We will watch the cosmos emerge from nothing, shaped by gods who were themselves newly born, carving order out of chaos with their bare hands and the body of a giant they had killed before the sun existed. We will walk the branches of the world tree, Yggdrasil, and visit the 9 worlds suspended in its roots and canopy. Worlds of fire and frost and golden halls and grey mists and underground kingdoms where the dwarves still hammer in the dark. We will sit with Odin, the All-Father, the wanderer who gave an eye to drink from the well of all-knowing and hung himself from the world tree for 9 days and 9 nights, just to learn the language of the universe. We will meet Thor, whose hammer is the thunder, and Loki, who is something the universe made to keep itself honest, and Freya, who weeps golden tears and rides to the battlefield to choose which of the dead she will take home with her. We will meet a wolf so enormous that when he opens his jaws, the upper jaw touches heaven and the lower touches earth. A serpent so long it encircles the entire world and bites its own tail. 3 women who sit at the base of the world tree spinning the fate of all living things, and who answer to no god, not even Odin. And we will end where all Norse stories end, eventually, in the the shadow of a prophecy that was spoken before the world began. A prophecy that everyone in that world knew was coming, and which none of them, not even the gods, could prevent. The Norse did not believe their universe was eternal. They believed it was brave. They built a cosmology in which the gods themselves were mortal, in which the world would one day end in fire and flood, and the final howling of wolves who had been waiting since the beginning of time. And they kept going anyway. They feasted, and they fought, and they told each other stories, and they sailed out into seas they could not chart, because the thing that mattered was not that you survived. The thing that mattered was how you faced it. This is a different kind of story from Rome. Rome was about the cost of building something permanent. The Norse story is about something more intimate and more terrifying. The question of how you live beautifully in a world you know will end. Do not feel the need to stay awake for all of it. The story will carry you. The voice will remain. And you may find in the morning that you know things you did not know the night before, absorbed not through effort, but through the quiet and receptive attention that lives in the hours between wakefulness and dream. The void is waiting. Let us begin there. Chapter 1. The Void and the First Gods. Before the world, before the gods, before time itself had a shape or a direction, there was Ginnungagap. Say the word quietly. Let it sit in the mouth for a moment. Ginnungagap. It means roughly the yawning void, the gap that gapes. It is one of the oldest words in the Norse cosmological vocabulary, and it describes something that no human language has ever quite managed to describe adequately. Not because it is complicated, but because it is the absolute opposite of complicated. It is nothing. A nothing so complete and so total that there is not even darkness in it, because darkness is still something. Darkness still has texture. Darkness still implies the possibility of light. Ginnungagap implies nothing, not even the possibility of its own ending. And yet, the Norse understood something that modern physics would take millennia to begin to articulate in its own language. Even in the deepest, most absolute nothing, there are forces, there are directions, there are potentials pressing against each other very quietly for longer than any mind can hold. To the north of Ginnungagap, Niflheim, the world of ice and mist, the primordial cold, a realm of 11 rivers, the Elivaga, which flowed outward from a central spring called Hvergelmir, and as they flowed into the void, they froze and built, layer upon layer, the slow accretion of frost into ice into something almost solid, almost real. The rivers carried not just water, but aita, a word that carries in it both poison and life force, the fundamental ambiguity of a universe that has not yet decided what it is going to be. To the south of Ginnungagap, Muspelheim, the world of fire, ruled by a being named Surtur, a name that means the Black One, the Scorched One, who sat at its southern boundary with a flaming sword and had been sitting there, in some sense, forever. Muspelheim was light and heat, and the particular restless violence of fire that has nothing to burn, pressing outward, pressing north, pressing toward the cold in the way that heat always presses toward cold. And in the middle, the void, the gap, the space between. When the fire from the south met the frost from the north at the edge of Ginnungagap, something happened that had never happened before, because before it happened, there was no before. The ice melted, the ether thawed, and from the thawing, slowly, the way all creation is slow when you have no reference point to measure it against, something began to take shape. The Norse sources are not precise about how long this took. They are not precise about it because precision would be false, because what they are describing is a process that happened outside of time, before time, in the space where time had not yet agreed to exist. The primordial drip of cold and heat, becoming water and then becoming something else, something more organized, something that had, against all the indifference of the void, a shape, a body. The first being was a giant. He was called Ymir. He was formed from the melting ice, quickened by the warmth of the southern fire, and he was the first thing that had ever been alive in the entirety of what existed. He was not a god. He was something older than gods, something the universe made before it understood what it was making. He was enormous and powerful, and, in the way of the very first things, deeply alone. Let us pause for a moment with Ymir in the dark, before the earth, before the sky, before there were any other living things to share his awareness with. There is only the former void, now slightly less void because he is in it. There is the last echo of ice giving way to warmth, the first sound the universe ever made when it thawed into something alive. He ate, he slept, and while he slept, he sweated, and from his sweat, from the moisture of his sleeping body in the space between frost and fire, children formed. From beneath his left arm grew a man and a woman. From his legs, 2 feet together made another giant. These were the first Jotnar, the first of the race we call frost giants. The beings who would be throughout the entire Norse cosmological story, both enemies and ancestors of the gods. But Ymir was not alone for long in the way that mattered, because the ice also gave birth to something else, a cow. She emerged from the ice as Ymir had emerged, shaped by the meeting of cold and warmth, and she was called Audhumla. She was enormous, a primordial cow, and she fed Ymir. 4 rivers of milk flowed from her and kept the first giant alive in the void. And Audhumla herself ate. She had nothing to eat but the salt blocks of primordial ice, and so she licked them. She licked the ice because that was what she was made to do. And on the first day of her licking, she uncovered something. By the second day, she had uncovered more. By the third day, she had licked into being a face, and then a head, and then a whole man, emerging from the ice of Niflheim like a sculpture being slowly revealed by the most patient of artists. His name was Buri. He was the first of a different kind of being, not a giant, something else, something that the universe was now trying out in a new direction. Buri had a son named Bor. We do not know how. The Norse sources do not explain it, and they do not explain it because the very earliest cosmological events do not require explanation in the same way that later events do. They simply are, the way the laws of physics simply are, the way the speed of light simply is. Buri existed. Bor was his son. The universe was becoming more complicated. Bor married a giantess. Her name was Bestla, daughter of the Frost Giants, one of Ymir's own descendants. And from that union, from the marriage between the first of the new beings and one of the old giant kin, 3 sons were born: Odin, Vili, Ve. These 3 brothers were the first gods, not the first living things. That was Ymir. Not the first beings to emerge from the ice. That was Buri. But the first gods, the first beings who would look at what existed and decide that it was not yet finished, that it could be shaped into something more, that the void had given them a starting point, and it was their job to build the world. They began by killing Ymir. This is the first great act of the Norse cosmological story, and it is worth sitting with its full strangeness. The gods did not create the world from nothing. They did not speak it into being, did not sculpt it from clay, did not imagine it into existence. They killed the oldest thing alive and built from his body. The 3 brothers rose against Ymir and slew him. The sources do not tell us exactly why. There is a suggestion that the giants who had proliferated from Ymir's body were becoming too numerous, too dangerous, too much of a pressure on the space that was not yet quite a world but was already feeling crowded. Or perhaps it was simply that Odin looked at what existed and saw that it needed to be something other than what it was, and understood that the transformation required destruction as its first step. When Ymir fell, his blood flowed, and it flowed in such quantity that all the frost giants, all of those who had come from his sweat and his warmth and the accretion of giant kin over the long cold epochs before the gods arrived, all of them drowned in the blood of their progenitor, all except one pair, a giant named Bergelmeyer and his wife, who climbed onto a millstone or a boat, the sources differ, and floated above the flood. From them, the frost giants of the later age would descend. But they were survivors of a catastrophe, not the first order of things. They would carry within them forever the memory of the first death. From Ymir's body, the world, Odin and his brothers carried the body of the first giant to the middle of what would become Midgard. And from each part of him, they made something. His flesh became the earth. His blood became the seas and the lakes and all the rivers of the world. His bones became the mountains. His teeth and the shattered fragments of bone became the rocks and the boulders and the gravel of the shorelines. His hair became the trees, every tree that has ever grown in soil that was, in the beginning, a giant's flesh. His skull they lifted and made into the sky, setting it above the earth like an enormous bowl, held up at its four corners by four dwarves, whose names mean north and south and east and west. His brains were scattered to become the clouds, and his eyelashes, the fine, curved hairs of the first being's eyes, these were gathered and arranged into a barrier, a wall, a boundary around the middle world that would be given to humans to keep the giants out. Midgard, the middle enclosure, the world of men girdled by the eyelashes of the first dead thing. The sources describe this process with a matter-of-fact brevity that is itself a kind of poetry. There is no ceremony, no consecration, no pause for the significance of what is happening. The gods simply work the way craftsmen work, efficiently, purposefully, without sentimentality, transforming what they have killed into the raw material of everything that would ever exist. But the world was still dark. Muspelheim to the south had fire, and so Odin took sparks from the fire realm and set them in the sky. Some he fixed in place. These became the stars, the fixed points by which sailors would one day navigate and farmers would one day calculate the turning of the seasons. Some he left to move. These became the sun and the moon, which were given to chariots and set moving across the sky in their daily and monthly rounds, chased perpetually by wolves who were always trying to catch them and had not yet succeeded, though everyone knew that one day they would. The light came, the sky brightened, and the gods looked at what they had made and found it incomplete. A man and a woman, one day. This is how the sources tell it. Walking along the shore of the new world, found two trees, an ash tree and an elm tree, standing on the beach, newly grown from earth that was Ymir's flesh, in air that was Ymir's breath, under a sky that was Ymir's skull. The gods gave the trees gifts. Odin breathed into them the gift of life. Ond, the animating breath, the vital force. Vili gave them wit and feeling, intelligence and emotion, the capacity to experience what they were alive in. Vi gave them speech and bearing, sight and hearing, the senses and the ability to stand upright in the world and speak their own names. The man they named Ask from the ash tree, the woman they named Embla from the elm, and from those two, in the world that had been built from a giant's body, the human race began. This is the creation story of the Norse. It is not tidy, it is not peaceful, it is not the story of a divine and benevolent craftsman making a harmonious world for his beloved creatures. It is the story of murder and transformation, and the stubborn insistence of the living against the indifference of the void. It is the story of a universe that began as nothing, managed to produce something alive, killed that something alive to make room for something better, and then breathed life into two trees on a cold beach and said, "Here, This is for you. Do what you can. There is something in this creation story that resonates deeply with the people who told it. The Norse did not live in a gentle world. Their winters could kill. Their seas could swallow ships without warning. Their world was not organized around the comfort of human beings. And so, their story of creation is also not organized around human comfort. It is organized around the idea that the world is not hostile to you, but it is not designed for you either. It was made from the body of something older and stranger than you, and it will outlast you. And the best you can do is find your place within it and do what you came here to do before the wolves catch the sun. Let the cold shore of the new world settle around you. The sound of those first waves on a beach that was, a moment ago, a giant's flesh. The smell of new earth. The first light of captured stars beginning to appear in a sky that is, if you look carefully at it, if you let yourself see it, the hollowed skull of the oldest thing that ever lived. The gods have done their work. The world is made. Now it needs to be understood. Wind across a cold beach at the beginning of time. Waves on new shore. The first stars fixed in a sky of bone. Let the creation settle into you. Let the newness of it rest in your chest like something breathing. We have the world. Now let us walk it. Chapter 2. The 9 worlds and the tree that holds them. At the center of everything that exists, at the absolute axis around which every world turns, from the coldest depth to the highest golden hall, stands a tree. Not an ordinary tree, not the kind that grows from soil and needs rain, and can be cut down by a man with an axe on a Tuesday morning. This tree is something older and stranger and more fundamental than that. This tree is the universe's own skeleton. It is the thing that holds everything else up. Its name is Yggdrasil. The word is usually translated as Odin's horse, because Ygg is one of Odin's many names, meaning the terrible one, and Drasil means horse. Horse is here a kenning, a poetic substitution for gallows, because Odin would one day hang himself from this tree for 9 days and nights in order to learn the runes. The world tree is also the world gallows. It is also the axis of all existence. These things are not contradictory in the Norse imagination. They are, in fact, the same thing. Yggdrasil is an ash tree. It is so vast that its 3 roots reach into 3 different cosmic realms. Its canopy spreads over all of the 9 worlds. Its trunk passes through the middle of everything that is, was, or will be. At its roots, 3 wells, each one a kind of knowing. The first root reaches into Niflheim, the primordial mist world, and there beneath it lies Vergelmir, the roaring kettle, the spring from which all the rivers of the world flow. Here, coiled around the root, gnawing perpetually at the bark and the wood, with teeth that have been chewing since before most things were born, lives Nidhogg. He is a dragon, or something like a dragon, something ancient and corrosive and determined, gnawing at the foundation of the world tree from below, working slowly and methodically toward the tree's destruction. He is never going to stop. He is what entropy looks like in a world that still has stories. Above him, at the tree's crown, lives an eagle whose name is not recorded, but whose size is proportionally as enormous as Nidhogg's is below. The eagle sees everything from his height. He is ancient and powerful and contemptuous, and between the eagle at the crown and the dragon at the roots, there runs perpetually and tirelessly a squirrel. His name is Ratatosk, the gnawer of teeth. He spends his entire existence, for as long as Yggdrasil has existed, for as long as the 9 worlds have existed, running up and down the world tree, carrying messages between the eagle and the dragon, insulting messages, provocations, slanders. Ratatosk tells the eagle what the dragon said about him, tells the dragon what the eagle said about him. He is, in the Norse cosmological system, the force of discord and miscommunication that exists, not because anyone designed it that way, but because the universe, once it had enough complexity, seemed to naturally produce something that spent its time stirring up trouble between its highest and lowest points. Even the world tree's cosmological ecology is complicated in the way that actual things are complicated. The second root of Yggdrasil reaches into Jotunheim, the realm of the giants, and there beneath it lies the well of Mimir. Mimir is one of the wisest beings in existence. He drinks from his well each day with the horn Gjallarhorn, and the well gives him all knowledge. He knows everything that has happened, is happening, and will happen. He keeps watch over the deepest knowledge of the cosmos, there at the roots of the world tree, in the cold giant country, patient as the ice that started everything. It was to this well that Odin came once and made a bargain. But that is a story for later. The third root reaches into Asgard, and beneath it lies the well of Urd, the well of fate. Here sit the 3 Norns, Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld. What was, what is, and what shall be. They weave, they carve, they water the world tree from their well to keep it alive. They are not gods. They answer to nothing and no one, not even Odin, who knows what they do and cannot change it. Now, walk the tree. Let us visit the worlds. There are 9 of them. Some sources disagree on exactly which 9 or how they are arranged. This disagreement is itself meaningful. The Norse understood their cosmology as something lived rather than something mapped, something that could be approached from different directions and show different faces. What follows is the shape that the sources most consistently agree on. Asgard, the realm of the gods. High in the branches of Yggdrasil, or perhaps above the branches, connected to the middle world by the rainbow bridge Bifrost. Asgard is everything a world of gods should be, and more complicated than it looks. it is fortified. The gods built walls around Asgard in the early days of the world, with some assistance, and at significant cost, from a builder whose identity proved, in the end, to be more complicated than the gods had bargained for. It has great halls. It has meadows of gold. The Norse sources describe it with a kind of aching beauty. Gimle, the hall that burns brighter than the sun, roofed with gold. The fields of Yggdrasil, where the gods meet to discuss the affairs of the cosmos. At its center, dominant, the great hall of Odin, Valhalla, Valhall, the hall of the slain. We will return to Valhalla. It requires its own telling. Asgard is home to two tribes of gods, the Aesir and the Vanir, who were once enemies and became, after a war and a peace and an exchange of hostages, uneasy family. The Aesir are the gods of power and wisdom and war. Odin, Thor, Tyr. The Vanir are the gods of fertility and magic and the sea. Njord, Freya. The peace between them is what holds the divine world together. It is not always comfortable. Below Asgard, Midgard, the middle world, the world of humans. Midgard sits at the center of the 9 worlds, accessible from Asgard via Bifrost, the rainbow bridge that the gods can cross and humans cannot, or can only cross at the invitation of the gods. It is a world bounded by the ocean, and in that ocean, encircling everything, lies the Midgard serpent, Jormungandr, coiled with his own tail in his mouth. He is large enough to encircle the entire world. He was put there by Odin, thrown into the sea when he was young, and he has been growing ever since, curling tighter, his great body pressing against the edges of the known world. Humans live between the serpent and the bridge, between the serpent and the serpent. This is what it means to be human in the Norse world, to live in the middle, bounded by forces so vast that you cannot even see them, under a sky that is a giant's skull, breathing air that is a giant's exhalation, walking on ground that is a giant's flesh, eating food that grows from soil made of ancient violence. And yet, they built farms. They raised children. They told each other stories. The Norse did not consider this grim. They considered it honest. To the east of Midgard, across a body of water or through dense forest, depending on the telling, lies Jotunheim, the realm of the giants. The giants, the Jotnar, are not, in the Norse imagination, simply enemies. They are older than the gods. They predate Asgard. The gods' own blood is partly giant blood. Odin's mother was the giantess Bestla. Thor's mother was the earth giantess Jord. The giants are the wild, ungovernable, enormous, amoral forces of the universe made personal. They are not evil in the way that a later tradition would understand evil. They are simply vast and old, and indifferent to the order the gods are trying to impose on the world. And the order they represent is the order of chaos itself, which is not disorder exactly, but a different kind of order, older and stranger and less accommodating to the requirements of civilization. Jotunheim is cold and mountainous and enormous. Its fortresses, Utgard, the outer enclosure, in contrast to Midgard, the middle enclosure, are built on scales that dwarf anything in the human world. The giants who live there are of varying kinds: frost giants, stone giants, sea giants, mountain giants. Some are monstrously ugly, some are magnificent. Several of them are very wise, wiser in some cases than the gods themselves. One of them is Mimir, who guards the well of deepest knowing. One of them is Utgard Loki, who will one day receive Thor as a guest and demonstrate that what you think you see and what is actually there are not always the same thing. The gods and the giants are in perpetual tension. The gods go to Jotunheim. The giants come to Asgard. There is war, and there is negotiation, and there is, sometimes, love. Thor's great hammer was made to keep giants in check. Odin seeks their wisdom. Loki is, in many readings, a giant by blood, if not by formal classification, a liminal figure who crosses the boundary between the two worlds so easily that the boundary itself becomes questionable in his presence. Below the roots of Yggdrasil, in the cold north, Niflheim, and deeper still, cut off even further from the warmth and the light, Helheim, the realm of the dead. This is where those who die in their beds go. Those who die of illness, old age, accident, the deaths that are not battles, that are not the glorious meeting of weapon and will. They go to hell, which is to say, they go to the realm ruled by a being also named Hel, daughter of Loki, half alive and half dead, her body split by a line of demarcation, one half living, one half the blue-black of a body already in the earth. Hell is cold. Its rivers are cold. Its halls are cold. It is called Nastrond, Corpse Shore, in its worst precincts, where the most dishonorable dead are sent. But it is not precisely a place of torment for most of its inhabitants. It is simply the place where most things end. The Norse did not romanticize death, but they did not make it into an obscenity either. It was the cold room at the end of the hall, and eventually you went there, and that was simply what was. Muspelheim to the south, the fire world, the realm of Surtur, who has been sitting at its border with his flaming sword since before the gods were born. He is patient in the way that fire is patient. That is, not patient at all in the usual sense, but capable of waiting indefinitely for the right moment to expand. At Ragnarok, Surtur will walk out of Muspelheim with his sword and will burn the world. He has been waiting for this for as long as the world has existed. He has been ready since before the world existed. Vanaheim, home of the Vanir, the older, perhaps more mysterious family of gods, associated with the sea and the fertility of the earth, and the kind of magic that the Aesir sometimes considered slightly disreputable, but could not entirely do without. After the war between the gods, the Vanir who came to live in Asgard as hostages, Njord, sea god and father of sailors, Freyr, lord of the harvest, and Freya, who defies easy summary, brought with them a form of magic called cider that Odin himself would learn, though it was considered women's work, and he bore a kind of shame for practicing it, even as he found it indispensable. Alfheim, realm of the light elves. They are bright and beautiful and associated with light and fertility, and the more benevolent aspects of the supernatural. Freya, who came from Vanaheim, rules over Alfheim, a gift given to him on his first tooth. The light elves appear in the sources relatively rarely, and with a vagueness that suggests the Norse understood them as a background glow of benevolence in the cosmos, rather than as personalities to be dealt with specifically. Svartalfheim or Nidavellir, the realm of the dwarves, dark, deep, underground, as unlike the bright worlds above as anything can be. The dwarves are craftsmen of supernatural ability. They made, by the Norse sources' reckoning, most of the significant objects in the cosmos. Odin's spear, Gungnir, the ring Draupnir, Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, the golden hair of Sif, the ship Skidbladnir that can sail any sea and be folded into a pocket when not needed, the chain Gleipnir that bound Fenrir the wolf. The dwarves are not warm figures. They are clever and deep, and their warmth goes into their work rather than into the quality of their company. They made what the gods needed, usually in exchange for something, sometimes gold, sometimes promised brides, sometimes a wager whose stakes were higher than the gods initially understood. They are the craftsmen of the cosmos, working in the dark by their own light, hammering at things that will matter later. And Yggdrasil holds it all together. The three roots in three realms, the well of chaos and creation below, the well of wisdom in the middle, the well of fate turning at the top, the eagle and the dragon never meeting, separated by the length of the universe, kept in their mutual fury by a squirrel who has nothing to do but carry insults between them. The gods walking the golden fields of Asgard above, the humans farming the middle world below, the giants at the borders, old and vast and unimpressed, the dwarves hammering in the deep, the dead settling quietly into the cold of Helheim, all of it moving, all of it breathing, all of it held in place by the roots of a tree that is also a gallows, that is also the spine of the universe, that is also being slowly eaten from below by something patient and ancient and inevitably, eventually, successful. The Norse built their universe this way on purpose, not as a warning, as an honest account. They looked at the world they lived in, the world of ice and fire and the brief warmth between them, of harvests that fed you and winters that could kill you, of seas that carried your ships and seas that swallowed them without ceremony. And they built a cosmology that matched what they actually observed. Life is held together. Life is being eaten from below. Both things are true at once. The tree stands for now. Rest with that. Let the 9 worlds settle around you like the layers of a deep place. Asgard above, bright and embattled. Midgard in the middle, warm and bounded. The cold worlds below. The fire waiting to the south. And the tree, always the tree, holding the whole extraordinary, complicated, doomed and alive universe in its branches. The sound of wind in a great ash tree. The sound of something gnawing very far below. The sound of a squirrel running, a fire burning in a high hall in Asgard, the sound of a raven's wings far away in the dark, wind across the branches of the world tree. Let it carry you higher into the golden halls, to the oldest presence in the Norse cosmos, to Odin. Chapter 3. Odin, the All-Father's sacrifices ravens and wisdom. He is old. Not old the way humans are old. Not old in the way that time wears down a body and dulls the sharpness of a mind. Old in the way that a mountain is old, or the ice of Niflheim is old. Old in a way that has become structural, that has become the thing itself. Odin was old before the world had a name for old. He will be old at the world's ending, when old will no longer mean anything. He has one eye, the other he gave away. He carries the absence of it with him everywhere, a dark socket or a closed lid, depending on the telling. And the absence is not a wound or a tragedy. It is a choice. It is the most deliberate choice he ever made, and he has never regretted it, though the price was enormous and the payment was made in the currency of permanent loss. He is Odin, All-Father, Lord of Asgard, God of poetry and wisdom and war and death and magic and royalty and wandering and countless other things, because he is the kind of being who does not stay in one place long enough to be categorized. He is the most complex of the Norse gods, the most contradictory, the most difficult to hold in a single thought. He is generous and terrifying and deceitful and magnificent and ancient and restless and, beneath all of it, deeply, profoundly afraid. He is afraid because he knows something that most gods do not know. He knows how the story ends. Let us begin with the sacrifices. There were 2 of them, and each one tells us something essential about what Odin is. The first sacrifice, the eye. The well of Mimir lies beneath the second root of Yggdrasil, in the cold reaches near Jotunheim. Mimir drinks from it each day and knows all things, everything that has ever happened, everything that is happening now, everything that will happen, the turn of every fate, the falling of every sparrow, the outcome of every battle that has not yet been fought. This is what the well holds. This is what is in the water. Odin wanted this knowledge. He came to Mimir's well and asked to drink. Mimir told him the price. 1 eye, put it in the well, and you may drink. Keep both eyes, and you may not. And Odin, the most powerful being in the 9 worlds, the ruler of Asgard, the god of gods, reached up and took out his own eye and laid it in the water of the well and drank. What he saw when the water touched his lips, everything, all of it, the whole shape of the cosmos, the beginning and the long middle, and the specific, terrible, unavoidable end. He saw what the Norns were weaving in. He saw the great wolf Fenrir breaking his chains. He saw the serpent rising from the sea. He saw Surta walking out of Muspelheim with his flaming sword. He saw his own death, and the death of his sons, and the burning of Asgard, and the swallowing of the sun. He saw the world drown, and the world reborn. He had asked for all knowledge. He received all knowledge. And the price was not just his eye. The price was that for the rest of his existence, for every age between that moment and Ragnarok. He would carry the knowledge of the ending inside him. He would know at every feast, every battle, every morning in the golden halls of Asgard, exactly how much time was left and exactly how it would go. He had asked for wisdom and received something heavier, certainty. The kind of certainty that cannot be shared or offloaded or bargained away. The kind of certainty that becomes the foundation of everything you do and everything you are, because you know that what you are doing and being is finite, and the timer is running, and the only question is what you do with what remains. Odin did not give up after Mimir's well. He did not decide that knowing the end was sufficient. He spent the rest of his existence doing two things, simultaneously preparing for Ragnarok and pursuing every additional fragment of wisdom and power that might, by some chance, make a difference. The second sacrifice, the runes. The runes are not simply an alphabet. In the Norse understanding, they are not a system that humans invented to represent sounds. They are a fundamental dimension of reality, a set of symbols that encode the deep laws of the universe itself. To know a rune, truly know it, not merely recognize its shape but understand its nature, is to have access to a piece of the world's own operating instructions. Odin wanted the runes. To get them, he hung himself. He hung himself from Yggdrasil, from the great ash, the world tree, with a spear wound in his side. He hung there for 9 days and 9 nights. The sources are explicit on this. 9 days and 9 nights of hanging in the void between the worlds, without food, without water, with no companion and no comfort, pierced by his own weapon in the freezing dark at the edge of everything. No one helped him. This is also explicit in the sources. He hung there alone, and the tree itself is described as a place of wind and silence and cold. He hung until he saw them, until the shapes of the runes revealed themselves to him in the darkness below, and he seized them, crying out as he grasped them, and fell from the tree. 9 days and 9 nights of self-imposed agony to understand the laws of reality. This is the second sacrifice, not one eye, an entire self, not an organ given to a well, a life given back to the void that made everything in exchange for the language the void used to make it. After these sacrifices, Odin knew 2 things that very few beings in any world knew: the contempt tents of Mimir as well, and the runes. He had paid an extraordinary price for each. He carried them both for the rest of time, and used them both ceaselessly, seeking always some way to turn knowledge into preparation, to transform certainty into advantage, to find in the runes some way to write a different ending. He never found it, but he never stopped looking. The ravens. Odin has two of them. Their names are Hugin and Munin, thought and memory. Each morning at dawn, he sends them out from Asgard to fly over all the 9 worlds. They see everything. They hear everything. They witness every event in every corner of the cosmos. And each evening they return to Asgard and sit on Odin's shoulders and report to him what they have seen. Thought and memory. He worries about them both, the old poems say. He worries that thought will not return, but he worries more about memory. This small detail is worth holding. The God of wisdom, who has already sacrificed an eye and hung himself from the world tree, who sits each evening receiving reports from the embodied forms of his own thought and memory. He worries more about memory than about thought, because thought, even when it does not return, will be replaced by other thoughts. New thoughts are always forming, but memory, once lost, leaves a darkness in its place that no new thought can fill. Odin understands, in a way that perhaps no other being in the Norse cosmos does, what it means to carry the weight of the past. He has been doing it since before the world had a past worth carrying. 2 wolves also, Jerry and Freki, the greedy and the ravenous. They sit at his feet at the great table in Valhalla, while he gives them the food and eats nothing himself, because Odin does not need to eat. He sustains himself on wine alone. He does not need food, because his body has long since been so thoroughly saturated with whatever it is that makes a being, what it is that the ordinary requirements of physical maintenance have ceased to apply. Or perhaps it is that he does not eat because eating is a kind of investment in the future, and Odin has reasons to regard the future with a complicated equanimity. Valhalla, the Hall of the Slain. This is Odin's greatest project, and the one that most clearly reveals what he knows and what he fears, and what he is trying to do about it. Valhalla is enormous. The sources describe it with a kind of ecstatic exactness. 540 doors, each wide enough to pass 800 warriors abreast. Its roof is made of shields. Its rafters are spears. It is vast enough to hold all the warriors it needs to hold, which is to say, all of the best warriors who have ever died in battle, from the beginning of the human world to the end of it. These warriors are the unhurried, the chosen ones, the ones who died with weapons in their hands, who died fighting, who died well. The Valkyries chose them, those magnificent, terrible women who ride over every battlefield in the human world, choosing the slain, deciding who goes to Valhalla and who goes to Freya's hall Sesrumnir, and who simply goes to hell. In Valhalla, the Einherjar do 2 things. They feast and they fight. everyday battle. They arm themselves in the morning and go out to the great field Yggdrasil, and they fight each other, all of them, the greatest warriors of every age, fighting together in a training war that never ends. They are killed and wounded in this daily battle, and every evening they are made whole again, healed of every wound, restored to full strength. And then they go back to the hall and they feast. Endless food. The boars Serimnir slaughtered each evening and made whole again each morning. Endless mead from the goat Hydron. And they drink and they eat and they tell their stories and they prepare. Because this is what all of it is for. The feasting, the daily resurrection, the training war. Odin is building an army. He knows what is coming. He has known since Mimir's well. He is using every remaining year of the world's existence to gather the finest warriors who have ever lived, collecting them one by one from the world of men as they die, and training them and feeding them and keeping them ready. Because on the day Ragnarok comes, he will need them all. He knows he will lose. The old prophecy says he will lose. Fenrir will swallow him whole on that final day, and his son Vidar will kill Fenrir afterward, and that will be some consolation to the universe, perhaps, but it will not be consolation to Odin. He knows this. He has known it for longer than the human world has existed. He builds his army anyway. This is what makes Odin the most deeply Norse of all the Norse gods. Not the ravens, not the eye, not the rune wisdom, but this, that he knows precisely what is coming, and he finds it insufficient reason to stop trying. That he collects his warriors and trains them and loves them in his particular cold and complicated way, and that he feasts with them in the hall of the dead, and that every morning he sends out his ravens, and every evening he receives their reports, and that he never mistakes certainty of defeat for permission to stop fighting. The Wanderer. But Odin is not only in Asgard. He is almost never only in Asgard, in fact. He is a wanderer by nature, drawn to the roads of all the 9 worlds, uncomfortable with the stillness of a hall, no matter how golden, always moving, always seeking, always in disguise. He travels in a wide-brimmed hat pulled low over the face, covering the empty socket of the missing eye, a cloak of blue or grey, or the particular indeterminate colour of the sky before a storm, a walking staff. He looks, in these wanderings, like a very old man of no particular distinction, the kind of traveller you might meet on any road and think nothing of until he opens his mouth and you realize, too late, that you are in the presence of something that has known the world longer than the world has known itself. He arrives at farmsteads and kings' halls. He asks riddles and gives them. He asks for information, offering stories in return, or wisdom, or the kind of advice that seems ordinary when it is given, and only reveals its full value years later when you understand what you were actually being told. He is not always kind in these disguises. Sometimes the wisdom he gives to a favorite king is the wisdom of how to do something that will eventually destroy the king, Because Odin's goals and his favorites' goals are not always the same, and Odin's goals always win. He is the god of poetry, the mead of poetry, a beverage made from the blood of a being called Kvasir, who was so wise that his blood, mixed with honey, produced something that could make anyone who drank it a poet or a scholar, was stolen from the giants by Odin through an elaborate deception involving his shape-shifting into a snake and a series of romantic advances on a giantess. He carries the mead of inspiration, and he gives it selectively, because inspiration, in the Norse worldview, is not your property. It is borrowed. It comes from somewhere else and returns there when it is done with you. He is the god of magic, of Seda, the deep and morally complicated shamanic practice of the Vanir that he learned from Freya. Seda involves tying fates and loosening them, seeing the hidden structures of the world, altering the outcomes of events by adjusting the threads of causality at the level below events. It is powerful. It is considered in Norse society vaguely shameful for a man to practice. There is something in it of the passive, the receptive, the yielding that the Norse gendered female and found uncomfortable in a male god of war. Odin practices it anyway. He is interested in power, not in his reputation for propriety, and he will take what works regardless of what form it comes in. This is what Odin is. Not a simple war god, not a benevolent father figure, not a figure of comfortable authority. He is the universe's own anxiety made divine, the consciousness that looked into the well and saw the ending, and decided that the correct response to that ending was to spend every remaining moment in the most intense and purposeful preparation possible. He is old and wise and afraid and magnificent and always on the road, because the hall, however golden, always faces in one direction, and Odin needs to see all directions at once. He is waiting. A torch burning in a high window of Valhalla. The sound of warriors at feast in the great hall below. Laughter, the ring of cups, the particular warm thunder of many human voices together. Outside, the cold Asgardian night, and above it, somewhere in the dark, two ravens flying, seeing everything, remembering everything, making their way home. The hall grows warm. The feast goes on. Let Odin's ravens circle overhead, and let the fire in the hearth speak to you. From wisdom, we move now to the louder, more complicated, more human hall of the gods, where thunder walks and mischief answers him, and love is something that goes to war. Chapter 4. Thor, Loki, Freya, gods in conflict. If Odin is depth and shadow and the aching weight of foresight, then Thor is the other side of the Norse divine coin. The side that faces outward, that meets the world directly, that does not calculate long consequences, but simply arrives. Thor is enormous. The sources describe him as the greatest of the Aesir in terms of physical strength, which in a divine hall that includes the gods of war and thunder and fate is not a small statement. He is red-bearded, broad-shouldered, possessed of an appetite for food and drink that even the Einherjar notice. He rides across the sky in a chariot drawn by two goats, Tangresnir and Tangjosta, the tooth grinder and the tooth gnasher. And the sound of his chariot on the road of the sky is the thunder that humans in the world below have always known as the signal that something powerful is moving above their heads. He has three great possessions. His hammer, Mjolnir, made by the dwarves in the dark forge of Nidavellir, the result of a bet that Loki made and nearly lost in the most Loki way possible by having his lips sewn shut at the crucial moment so he could not complete the interference he had begun. Mjolnir is small enough to be hidden under a cloak. It returns to Thor's hand after being thrown. It can smash anything. In the Norse world, it is the primary weapon against the giants, the divine instrument of boundary keeping. When things press too hard against the edges of the ordered world, Thor goes out with his hammer and pushes back. He was doing this constantly. The giants were always pressing. Thor was always pushing back. It was, in some ways, the most honest description of what the Norse believed the world required. Constant maintenance against entropy by something that did not mind the work. His iron gloves, Jarngripa, without which he cannot grip the hammer. His belt, Megingjord, which doubles his already divine strength. Thor is not subtle. He is not calculating. He is not, in the way that Odin is, playing a long game against the darkness of a prophesied ending. He is immediate. He sees a problem, usually a giant who is making a nuisance of themselves, or a serpent who is threatening the world, or something very large and threatening and requiring the direct application of enormous force. And he deals with it. This is enormously useful. It is also, at times, enormously dangerous, because the problems that Thor solves with his hammer are not always problems that require a hammer. He has a complicated relationship with his greatest enemy. The Midgard serpent, Jormungandr, son of Loki, encircler of the world, and Thor are destined for each other in the most absolute way the Norse universe provides. At Ragnarok, they will finally fight. Thor will kill the serpent and then take 9 steps and fall down dead, killed by the serpent's poison that will have been soaking into him through the battle. 9 steps. That is what he is allotted after his greatest deed. But before Ragnarok, he has already met the serpent once. Disguised as a normal fish at the end of a giant's fishing line in the middle of the ocean, Jormungandr took Thor's bait and was hauled toward the surface, and Thor looked down into the eye of the thing, and the serpent looked up into the eye of the thing, and for a moment, both of them knowing exactly what they were looking at, both of them knowing the world's ending was a breath away. The giant whose boat it was, terrified, cut the line. The serpent sank back into the depths. Thor nearly killed the giant in frustration, and the world continued. But they had seen each other. They both knew. Thor is beloved. Among the Norse, among the ordinary farmers and and sailors and craftsmen who populated the world he protected, Thor was the most loved of the gods, not Odin, who was too complicated and too dangerous and too likely to sacrifice you for his larger purposes. Thor, whose hammer was the thunderstorm that brought rain to crops, who went out, unglamorous and reliable, hammer in hand, whenever something threatened the people of Midgard, who ate too much and drank too much, and was occasionally deceived by giants who were cleverer than they looked, but who always went out and always came back, and whose red beard in the storm clouds was a kind of promise that the world was being maintained. People wore small hammers as amulets. They wore them around their necks for protection, for luck, for the particular comfort of knowing that the thing watching over you was the kind of thing that went out to fight for you and did not expect you to understand the full complexity of why. Now, Loki. Loki defies the categories the Norse had available for divine beings. He is called a god, but he is not quite a god. He is the blood brother of Odin. They made a pact long ago, an oath of brotherhood that bound them in ways that Odin never entirely anticipated and that Loki never entirely forgot. He lives in Asgard. He is not of the Aesir by birth, and the sources are ambiguous about whether he is technically of giant blood or of something else entirely, something the cosmology does not have a clear name for. He is a shapeshifter. This is his most fundamental characteristic, more fundamental even than his cleverness, because the cleverness is a consequence of the shapeshifting. When you can be anything, you begin to understand everything. When you can be male and female and animal and human and divine and monstrous and everything in between, the categories that other beings use to organize their world begin to look like what they are: useful fictions, agreed upon because agreement is necessary for a society to function, but not the deep truth of things. Loki is the deep truth of things. Or he is the laughter that the deep truth produces when it looks at the fictions. He is the force of change in a world that needs stability. He is the question that the answer doesn't want to face. He is also genuinely useful. Many of the gods' greatest treasures exist because Loki caused a problem that required him to go and get a dwarf to solve it. Sif's golden hair, after he shaved off the original in a prank. Thor's hammer itself. Odin's spear, Gungnir. The ring, Draupnir. Loki is the reason these things exist, because Loki is the reason they were needed in the first place. And he is also, frequently, the intelligence that figured out how to acquire them. He is chaos that produces order as a byproduct. He is the trickster who builds the world by breaking it and then having to fix it. He has 3 children by a giantess named Angerboda. 3 children who are, each of them, something the universe was not entirely ready for. Fenrir, the wolf. We will speak of him properly later. Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, thrown into the sea by Odin, who saw him and decided the sea was the safest place for him. He has been there ever since, growing. Hel, ruler of the dead. half alive, half dead, sent by Odin to preside over the realm where most of humanity will eventually go. Loki also has other children, by other means. He was, on one occasion, a mare, and was impregnated by the stallion Svadilfari, a horse belonging to a giant builder who had been hired to build Asgard's walls, and gave birth to an 8-legged horse named Sleipnir, who became Odin's mount, the best horse in the 9 worlds, born from Loki in animal form, given to Odin as a kind of apology. Sleipnir can travel between the worlds. He can run across the sky. He carried Odin on every wandering, through every realm, across every road. This is Loki, shapeshifter and schemer and boundary crosser, father of monsters, mother of the All-Father's horse, companion of Thor on quests into Jotunheim, providing the cleverness that Thor's hammer cannot supply. Increasingly, as the ages of the world turned, moving toward the side of entropy rather than the side of order, not because he is evil in a simple sense, but because the world system, as it treated him and as it treated what he had made, gave him more and more reason to let the things that were breaking break. He is the hinge of the Norse universe. Everything depends on whether he stays, and he will not stay. But that is later. Now, Freya, she is difficult to approach from any single direction because she occupies simultaneously territories that other cultures have always kept carefully separated. She is the goddess of love and beauty, of desire, of gold, of the particular warmth between human beings when it is at its most powerful and most uncomplicated. She is also the goddess of war and death. She rides to the battlefield, and she chooses the slain. Half of the battle dead go to Odin, half to Freya. She takes them to her hall, Sesrumnir, in the field Folkvanga, and there they stay. She owns a cloak of falcon feathers that allows her, and any who borrow it, to take the form of a falcon and fly between the worlds. Loki borrows it frequently. It is one of the more functional divine tools in the Norse arsenal, and Freya lends it with a generosity that is characteristic. She is not a small or possessive goddess. She has the capacity for grief that matches her capacity for joy. She weeps, the sources say, when she thinks of her husband Odd, who is absent on a long wandering that the sources do not fully explain, and her tears fall as gold. She wears a great necklace called Brisingamen, made by 4 dwarves in Nidavellir, a necklace of such extraordinary beauty that she paid a price for it that caused genuine scandal in Asgard. She paid one night with each of the 4 dwarves who made it. This was considered remarkable and somewhat shocking. Freya was unbothered. She is the kind of being who knows what she wants and pays what she must to have it, and does not afterward apologize for the transaction. She is also a practitioner of Zaida. It was she who taught it to Odin, or who at least brought it to Asgard from Vanaheim when she came there as a peace hostage after the war between the gods. She sees fates. She understands the hidden mechanics of the world. She is, in this respect, one of the most powerful beings in the Norse cosmos. combining the knowledge of deep magic with the capacity for the full range of human emotion and the willingness to go to war. The war between the Aesir and the Vanir is one of the early defining events of the Norse world. Its cause is lost to the complexity of the sources, but its resolution matters. The two families of gods fought. They sent hostages to each other as part of the peace settlement. The Vanir sent Njord and his children Freyr and Freya to Asgard. The Aesir sent Hoenir and the wise Mimir to Vanaheim. When the Vanir discovered that Hoenir was incapable of making decisions on his own without Mimir to advise him, they felt they had been cheated, and they cut off Mimir's head and sent it back to Odin, who preserved it with herbs and spoke to it and received counsel from it for the rest of time. Mimir's head in a jar. Odin consulting it between the worlds. Even the peace between the gods came at a cost and left something irrevocably strange in its wake. Freya, and Njord stayed in Asgard. The Vanir and the Aesir became one family. Uncomfortable, not always trusting each other, but unified by necessity and by the recognition that the world outside the hall was stranger and more threatening than the tensions within it. This is the divine household the Norse inherited from their mythology. Odin, knowing too much and wandering always. Thor, going out daily to fight the things that need fighting. Loki, crossing every boundary and moving year by year toward the great betrayal that the universe had been building toward since the beginning. Freya, enormous-hearted and formidable, weeping gold and riding to war. The Vanir, remembering Vanaheim and keeping their own counsel. The unhurried in Valhalla, feasting and fighting and preparing. All of them moving, even in their daily routines, toward the same ending. Not one of them speaking of it most of the time, because some things are too large to hold in ordinary conversation. Some things you know in your bones and live with in your silence, and only acknowledge when the wind is right and the fire is low and the night is very long. The fire burning low, the hall settling into warmth and quiet, the sound of rain on a longhouse roof far away. The gods for a moment at peace. Rain on thatch. The hall is quiet now, but beneath the quiet, beneath the warmth and the sleeping gods and the feasting Einherjar, something moves, something that has been moving since before most of the world could name it. The creatures of the Norse cosmos are not simply monsters. They are the universe's own deep logic made flesh. Let us go to them. Chapter 5. Fenrir Jormungandr, the Norns and the creatures of the deep world. There are beings in the Norse cosmos that are not gods, and not giants, and not humans, and not dwarves. They are older than the categories. They are the things that the universe made when it was still deciding what kind of universe it was going to be. when the rules were still being written and certain things escaped the writing and became themselves before anyone had a name for what they were. Let us begin with the wolf. Fenrir. He was born in Jotunheim, son of Loki and the giantess Angrboda, and when he was young enough to still fit inside a hall, the gods brought him to Asgard because they were afraid of what he might become and believed, with the particular logic of those who have seen the future and cannot stop acting on it, that keeping him close was better than leaving him free. It was not better. He grew. He grew the way the sea grows when you have given it no walls. Steadily, without urgency, in every direction at once. He grew until the gods looked at him and saw something that the oldest of them recognized from the oldest stories. He grew until he was large enough that his very existence was a kind of argument against the order the gods were trying to maintain. They tried to chain him. Twice. The first chain was called ladding. The gods proposed it to Fenrir as a test of his strength. Could he break it? Fenrir looked at the chain and decided the test was worth accepting. He flexed and the chain broke. The gods said, "See how strong he is." But their eyes were measuring something other than his strength. The second chain was called Dromi, heavier and stronger. Again the challenge was offered. Again, Fenrir accepted. Again the chain broke. The gods praised him and watched. But they knew Laeding and Dromi would not hold him forever, and they knew what they needed was not stronger iron, but something different. Something the world had not yet made, because the world, in the early age of the Norse cosmos, had only made things that could be broken. They went to the dwarves. The dwarves of Nidavellir made Gleipnir. It was made, the sources say, from 6 things that do not exist. The sound of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, the spittle of a bird. 6 things that have no existence. And from their non-existence, the dwarves made something more unbreakable than any chain of iron or bronze or divine metal, because the only things that cannot be broken are the things that are not there. Gleipnir looked like nothing, like a ribbon of silk, smooth and seemingly weightless. When the gods brought it to Fenrir and proposed the third test, the wolf looked at it and was suspicious. He had broken iron chains. This did not look like an iron chain. It looked like something that required a different kind of strength to resist. He refused to be bound by it, lest one of the gods put a hand in his mouth as a pledge of good faith, as a guarantee that this was truly a test and not a trap. The gods looked at each other. None of them volunteered. To put your hand in Fenrir's mouth, in good faith, knowing what he could do with it. This required a particular kind of courage. or a particular kind of understanding that some things simply have to be done, and the cost of doing them is the cost, and there is nothing to be said about it. Tyr stepped forward. Tyr is the god of law and justice and order. He is one-handed by the end of this story, but he is not one-handed at its beginning. He puts his hand in Fenrir's mouth. The gods bind the wolf with Gleipnir. The wolf tries to break it as he had broken the others, and cannot, because you cannot break what is made of nothing, cannot tear what has no substance, cannot overcome a chain that exists in the spaces between existing things. Fenrir bit off Tyr's hand. Tyr accepted this. He had known it was the price when he stepped forward. He is the god of law. He understood that some transactions are binding even when they are unjust, that the order of the world sometimes requires that the innocent bear what the guilty owe. He lost his hand so that the wolf could be bound. He carried the wound forever, and he kept performing the work of justice with the other hand, because the work does not stop just because the cost was real. Fenrir was taken to an island in the middle of the sea. He was bound with Gleipnir, staked to a boulder called Gjoll, a sword propped open in his jaws to hold them apart. He has been there since. He will be there until Ragnarok, when Gleipnir will break, and the sound of the cat's footfall, and the beard of the woman, and all the other non-existent things will return to their non-existence, and Fenrir will be free. He is enormous. He has been growing there on his island, in his binding, for all the ages of the world. When he opens his jaws at Ragnarok, the upper jaw will touch the sky and the lower jaw will scrape the earth. He will swallow Odin whole. Jormungandr, Thor's great enemy, Loki's second child, the serpent that encircles the world. He was thrown into the sea around Midgard as a young creature, thrown by Odin, who recognized in him the same danger he had recognized in Fenrir. And as Fenrir grew on his island, Jormungandr grew in the ocean, curling around the entire circumference of the world, growing until he was large enough to bite his own tail. A perfect circle of serpent around the entirety of human existence. He and Thor have met. They will meet again. At Ragnarok, when the seas overflow and Jormungandr rises from the ocean and comes ashore, Thor will be waiting with Mjolnir, and they will fight the fight they have both been moving toward since the beginning of the world. Thor will kill him. The serpent's poison will kill Thor in the afterward, and Thor will fall after 9 steps. 9 steps. The same number of nights Odin hung on the world tree for the runes. Hel, the third child of Loki. She was given Niflheim and the realm of the dead to rule, sent there by Odin with the same matter-of-fact purposefulness with which he sent Jormungandr to the sea. Her body is half living and half dead, one side the normal color of a living being, the other side the blue-black of a body in the deep cold. The dead come to her. The vast majority of the dead come to her, everyone who dies of anything other than violence in battle, everyone who ages out of the world, everyone who slips away in the night. They come to Hell's Hall, which is called Eljudnir, and they eat from a plate called hunger, and they use a knife called famine. It is not comfortable, but it is not active torment either. It is the deep, cold, grey continuance of existence after the end of living. It is what comes after for most. Odin sent his son Baldur there. This is one of the most devastating events in the Norse mythos, and we will speak of it in the last chapter, in the shadow of what it means. Baldur's death is the first crack in the ending. The Norns. At the base of Yggdrasil, beside the well of Urd, they sit. Urd, what was? Verdandi, what is? Skuld, what shall be? The three Norns are among the most powerful forces in the Norse cosmos, not because they have weapons or armies or magic in the active sense, but because they are the ones doing the work that everything else is built upon. They weave the fates of all living things, gods and giants and humans and elves and everything else that has existence, on the loom of time. They carve these fates into the bark of Yggdrasil, and they water the tree with water from Urd's well, and with white clay from beside it, to keep the tree alive and the fates cycling in the proper direction. They answer to nothing. Not Odin, though he knows what they do. Not any other god or giant or being in any of the 9 worlds. They were there before most things existed, and they will be there, performing the same work after Ragnarok. They are not fate in the sense of a personal force that cares what happens to you. They are fate in the sense of the weather. Impersonal, structural, the consequence of how the universe is put together rather than any individual will being applied to any individual life. The Norse did not find this comforting, but they found it honest. They looked at the world and they saw that things happened that could not be explained by personal intent or personal virtue, that the good died young and the wicked prospered, and the storms came regardless of whether you had done anything to deserve them. And rather than building a cosmology that rationalized this as secretly just, they built one that acknowledged it as simply the nature of the weaving. The Norns are not cruel, they are not kind, they are the pattern itself, indifferent to the feelings of the individual threads. Other great creatures. At the base of Yggdrasil, Nidhogg gnaws. He has been gnawing since the beginning. He will gnaw until the end. He is not gnawing because he has a plan or because he intends to topple the tree. He gnaws because gnawing is what he is. He is entropy made into a dragon, the slow, patient, mindless dissolution of structure that is built into the fabric of everything that exists. He is not evil. He simply is what happens to all things, given enough time. Against Nidhogg, the Norns, watering the tree, order versus entropy, fate's weavers versus the Nora at the roots. The tree has been standing long enough to make it to this story. But Nidhogg has not stopped. Above, the unnamed eagle, with his wind-sharp eyes and his contempt for the creature below. They never meet. Ratatosk the squirrel moves between them, carrying each one's opinion of the other, keeping the hostility warm. This is perhaps the strangest and most domestic image in the Norse cosmos, the world tree as the site of a perpetual neighborhood dispute, mediated by a very busy and very irresponsible squirrel. The Valkyries. We have mentioned them. They deserve more. The Valkyries are Odin's choosers. They ride over every battle in the human world, riding horses through the air above the fighting, unseen by the combatants, except sometimes in the shimmer of their armor when the light catches it at the right angle, which the Norse attributed to the northern lights. They choose who dies. They ride among the fallen, and they take the ones Odin has marked for Valhalla, sometimes described as reaching down and lifting them, sometimes as arriving already knowing the choice made before the battle began. They are warriors themselves. Their names are evocative. Brynhildr, armor of war. Gondul, the one who transforms. Skogul, high power. Sigrun, victory rune. They are fierce and beautiful and uncompromising, and they serve Odin. And through Odin, they serve the purpose of Valhalla. And through Valhalla, they serve the preparation for Ragnarok. There are also individual Valkyries, whose stories are told at more length, whose lives intersected with heroes in the human world, who loved and suffered and were bound by oaths that conflicted with their nature. Brynhildr, the great shield maiden, who was put to sleep by Odin for disobeying him in a battle judgment, and who woke to find the world had moved on, and the love she had been promised was complicated in ways that simple strength could not resolve. These are the creatures. And now, Sleipnir. Odin's horse, 8-legged, born of Loki's shape-shifting and the chaos that surrounded the building of Asgard's walls. Sleipnir is the best of all horses in all 9 worlds, not because he is fastest in any conventional sense, but because he can travel anywhere. He can run across the sea. He can run across the sky. He can carry Odin into Helheim and back. He moves between the worlds the way that thought moves between ideas, instantly, without the ordinary constraints of distance and time. He is a gift from Loki to Odin. A monstrous, miraculous, completely unprecedented gift, born from the most unlikely of circumstances, the product of a situation that no one planned, and that could only have produced something so extraordinary because the circumstances themselves were so extreme. This is Loki's contribution to the universe. Unexpected gifts obtained at impossible cost through means that nobody would have chosen and that everyone pretends afterward to wish had gone differently. Sleipnir runs on 8 legs across the sky. The dwarves made Mjolnir because Loki made a bet he nearly lost. The golden hair of Sif exists because Loki felt like committing a prank and then felt like fixing it. The world is richer for all of this, and also more precarious. The creatures are the Norse universe's way of insisting on its own completeness, Every cosmos needs a Noah at its roots. Every cosmos needs a wolf at the end of time. Every cosmos needs 3 women at the base of the tree, weaving, without whom the tree would die and the worlds would fall. The Norse built all of these in, not as afterthoughts, as structural members, as load-bearing walls of the universe they inhabited. Rest with that. The wolf on his island, the serpent coiling in the dark water, the 3 women weaving without ceasing, the dragon below, the eagle above, the squirrel between, all of them in their places, all of them doing what they were made to do. The sound of water on stone at the base of the world tree, the creak of enormous branches, somewhere deep below, very faint, the rhythmic sound of gnawing, the gnawing below, the weaving above. Let them fade. Let the fire burn lower. The hour is late now in the Norse cosmological story. The world has been made and named and populated and loved. The creatures are in their places. The gods are in their halls. And somewhere in the darkness, at the edge of everything, the prophecy is waiting. Chapter 6. The Shadow of Ragnarok, the Prophecy and the Waiting. There was a woman who was very old, or who had always been, or who was something that precedes both of those categories. The sources call her a vulva, a seeress, a prophetess, a practitioner of the deepest cedar magic. Odin summoned her from the grave, or she came to him in a vision, or she existed in the space between the worlds and could be consulted there. The sources do not agree on the mechanism, because the mechanism is not the point. The point is what she said. She told him everything, the whole shape of things to come, from the earliest ages to the very end. She spoke the Voluspa, the prophecy of the seeress, and Odin listened with his one eye and heard the whole future laid out with the terrible clarity of someone who has nothing to protect by lying about it. It began with the world's creation. She had been there, or something in her had been there, since before the gods. She told him about the first ages, about the Golden Age, when the gods first built Asgard and played their games on the green fields, and everything was new and bright, and the darkness had not yet gathered at the edges. The age when gold was everywhere and no one wanted anything else, when there was no crime and no war among the divine, and the world gleamed with the confidence of things that have been recently made and have not yet learned what breaking is. Then she told him about the first war. Then she told him about Baldur. Baldur is Odin's son. He is beautiful. The sources struggle to adequately describe how beautiful, resorting eventually to the suggestion that he is so fair and so bright that light itself seems to emanate from him, that looking at him is like looking toward the sun. He is also in the way of the most beautiful things. In any mythology, already marked. He began to have dreams, bad dreams, the kind that press on you in the night with the weight of something that is trying to tell you something you do not want to know. Baldur dreamed his own death, and the dreams would not stop, and the gods saw the darkness gathering around their brightest and most beloved, and they were afraid. Frigg, Odin's wife, Baldur's mother, a goddess of formidable intelligence and deep love, took an oath from everything in the world. Every plant, every stone, every animal, every metal and venom and disease. She traveled through all the 9 worlds, and she asked each thing to swear that it would not harm Baldur, and each thing swore. She was thorough in a way that only a mother protecting her child can be thorough, exhaustive, methodical, leaving nothing out, almost nothing out. She passed over the mistletoe. It was young, she thought, or very small. The sources give different reasons. Perhaps it seemed too insignificant to bother. Perhaps she saw it and judged it harmless already. Perhaps the Norns had written into her the necessity of that small omission, and nothing she could have done would have changed it. Perhaps all of these are true simultaneously, in the way that the most important mistakes always are. The gods, once Frigg had completed her circuit of oaths, made a game of Baldur's invulnerability. They threw things at him, weapons, stones, fire. Everything bounced away or fell harmlessly at his feet. Baldur stood laughing in the middle of this game that was also a declaration of love, because the Norse way of saying "we are glad you are alive" was often to demonstrate collectively that nothing could kill you. Loki watched. He went to Frigg in disguise, an old woman stopping to talk, asking idly whether really everything had sworn its oath. Frigg, proud and relieved, said yes, everything. And then, because pride has always made honesty too easy, she said, except the mistletoe, which seemed too young. Loki found the mistletoe. He shaped it into a dart or a spear, something light and small and capable of being thrown. He went to the game where the gods were playing at killing Baldur without killing him. He found Hoder, Baldur's blind brother, who stood apart from the game because he could not see to aim. And Loki, patient and kind in the way of the worst temptations, guided his hand. He told him he would help him participate, that it was only fair that Hoder should be part of the game, that he would aim for him. Hoder threw the mistletoe. Baldur fell. The silence that followed this event is one of the great silences in all mythology. The gods stood and did not speak and did not move. The most beautiful of them was lying on the ground, and the game was over, and everything that came before this moment and everything that would come after it was divided by this line, this bright figure on the ground, this impossible ending of what should have been inviolable. They wept. The sources describe it with a directness that is itself a kind of grief. They all wept. The gods of war and wisdom and thunder and magic stood in a circle around Baldur's body, and they wept, because some things are too large for any other response. Odin wept also. But Odin wept, knowing something the others did not know. Knowing that this death was not simply the death of a beloved son, but the beginning of the sequence he had drunk from Mimir's well to see. Baldur's death was the first event of Ragnarok, not the battle itself, not the fire or the flood or the breaking of chains, but this, a god dead on a field in Asgard, killed by a blind brother guided by a hand that knew exactly what it was doing. Hermod, another of Odin's sons, volunteered to ride to Hel and bring Baldur back. Odin gave him Sleipnir, who could travel between the worlds. Hermod rode for 9 days through dark valleys until he reached the gates of Helheim. He rode over the gate without stopping. He found Baldur seated in the highest place in Hel's hall. He asked Hel to release him. He told her the whole of Asgard was weeping. Hel said, "If this is true, if truly all things weep for Baldur, then let them weep, and he may return. But if any single thing does not weep, he stays." The gods sent word to every corner of every world. Weep for Baldur. All things wept. Stone and wood and metal and animal and fire and sea, all of them wept. There was a giantess at the edge of a cave. Her name was Thok. She alone refused. She said she had received nothing from Baldur in life and would not weep in his death. Let Hel keep what she has. Thok was Loki. The sources do not say this with complete unanimity, but the overwhelming consensus of the tradition is that it was Loki in yet another disguise, completing what he had begun, ensuring that Baldur would not return, ensuring that the sequence, once begun, could not be interrupted. Why? The question has been debated for 1,000 years. Loki is not evil in any simple sense. He is the trickster, the boundary crosser, the force of change. He had been sliding toward this moment for the whole length of the story, and the reasons are as complicated as he is. Part of it was that the gods had never fully accepted him. Part of it was that he had seen what was coming and decided that his role in it was not the defender, but the initiator. Part of it was that he was Loki, and Loki does what Loki does, and the universe made him precisely because the universe needed someone to make this happen in order to make the new world happen afterward. None of these answers is complete. None of them is meant to be. When the gods understood what Loki had done, they captured him. He had run. He had hidden, turned himself into a salmon, and lived in a pool beneath a waterfall in the mountains. One of the gods saw him from a height and understood what the flicker in the pool was, and they caught him in a net. They bound him in a cave deep underground, chained to 3 rocks with the intestines of his own son Nafi, who who was killed for this purpose, the chain made from him, one cruelty responding to another in the logic of a world that has already started ending. Above Loki's face, the gods fixed a serpent whose venom drips, drop by drop, continuously. Loki's wife, Sigyn, stays beside him. She holds a bowl above his face to catch the drops. When the bowl fills, she must turn to empty it, and in that moment, the venom falls on Loki's face, and he twists in agony, and the writhing of his body shakes the earth. This is the Norse explanation for earthquakes, not geology, not the movement of plates, but a bound god in agony, twisting, waiting. He is waiting for Ragnarok, when the chains will break. Fimble winter, the winter before the end. 3 years of winter with no summer between. The sources say it clearly. 3 consecutive winters. The sun weak and then absent. The cold coming and not releasing. The crops failing. The world growing quiet in the way that dying things grow quiet. The snows will fall and the winds will come, and the warmth will simply not return. And in the cold and the dark, the things that hold civilization together will dissolve, and brother will kill brother, father will kill son, and the old bonds of loyalty and decency that the Norse understood as the infrastructure of human life will crack under the weight of the long winter and fall. This is Ragnarok's herald, not a battle cry, a weather report. When the 3 winters have passed, Jormungandr stirs in the deep water. The Midgard serpent releases his tail, gives up the perfect circle of his encirclement, and begins to rise. The ocean floods inward over the shore, over the land, over everything the sea has been holding back. The great ship, Naglfar, made from the nails of the dead, the untrimmed nails that thoughtful people cut before their burial, so as not to contribute material to this ship, sets sail across the flood. The giants board it. Surtur walks out of Muspelheim with his sword that blazes brighter than the sun. Heimdall sees it coming. He has always seen it coming. He has the sharpest eyes of any being in the 9 worlds, can see for hundreds of miles in any direction, can hear the grass growing and the wool growing on sheep. He stands guard at the Rainbow Bridge Bifrost as he always has, watching, and when Ragnarok comes, he will take up the Gjallarhorn and blow it, and the sound will reach every corner of every world, and the Einherjar will wake from their last feast in Valhalla and arm themselves, and Odin will gather them and lead them to the field called Vigridr. Vigridr is described as so vast that it takes 100 leagues in every direction to reach its edges. It will not be large enough. Odin goes to the battle himself. He consults Mimir's head one final time before the fight, the severed head in its herbs, the repository of all deep knowledge, consulted at the final moment by the god who has been preparing for this since before the world existed. What they say to each other is not recorded. The wolf Gleipnir breaks. Fenrir is free and enormous beyond any measurement that the story allows. his upper jaw against the sky, his lower jaw dragging the earth, burning eyes, running to the battle with a hunger that has been building for as long as the world has existed. Odin goes to meet Fenrir. He is swallowed whole. This is the death of Odin, the All-Father, the Wanderer, the god who sacrificed his eye and hung himself and built his army and consulted the dead and never stopped trying. He is swallowed by the wolf he could not kill. He has known this was coming since Mimir as well. He went to meet it anyway. Vidar, his son, avenges him. He steps on the wolf's lower jaw and tears the upper jaw apart. Either that, or he drives his great shoe, made from all the scrap leather that cobblers have ever cut away from shoe edges and saved for exactly this purpose, into the wolf's mouth and kills him that way. Fenrir dies, but Odin is already gone. Thor and Jormungandr fight their destined battle. Thor kills the serpent with Mjolnir. He takes 9 steps. He falls. Freya fights Surtur without his sword. He gave his sword away long ago as a gift to win the hand of the giantess Gerd. And on this day of days, he faces the fire, giant empty-handed, and falls, because even a god cannot fight Muspelheim's own fire without the weapon that could match it. Tyr and the great dog Garm fight each other and both die. Heimdall and Loki find each other at last on that vast field and kill each other simultaneously. Surtur, still standing, takes his flaming sword and sets the world on fire. The earth sinks into the sea. The sun is swallowed. The stars go out, and then silence. Not Ginnungagap silence, not the absolute nothing of the void before the beginning. A different silence, the silence after something, the silence that contains in itself the shape of everything that existed and now does not. But this is not where the Norse story ends. The earth rises again, green and new, and washed clean by the flood that swallowed it, unscarred. The fields unplanted but ready, the mountains new washed and bright, waterfalls running with water from the melted snows, and in the sky above this new earth, a new sun. The old sun was swallowed, yes, but before she was swallowed, she gave birth to a daughter, and the daughter's light is rising now, golden and young, over a world that has been emptied and will now be filled again. Some gods survive Ragnarok. Vidar, who avenged his father. Vali, another of Odin's sons. Thor's sons, Modi and Magni, who find Mjolnir on the field after the battle and carry it forward. Hauder and Baldur. Yes, Baldur, the beautiful, rises from Helheim after the world's end, because Hel's dominion was over the old world, and the old world is gone. And in the new world, Baldur walks again in the sunlight, healed, incandescent, the way he was before the mistletoe. And on the field of Vigrider, where the great battle was fought, the gods who survived find again the golden gaming pieces of the early age scattered in the grass, the pieces they had played with in the first golden time, when everything was new and bright and the darkness had not yet gathered. They find them again on the morning of the new world, and they sit together and they look at each other and they begin. They find two humans also, a man and a woman who survived Ragnarok hidden inside the world tree. Yggdrasil had trembled in the battle but stood, who emerge into the new world, the way Ask and Embla emerged onto the beach of the first world. From them, the new human race begins. Yggdrasil still stands. The world tree endured what everything else could not. Its roots are still in the three realms. Nidhogg still circles in the darkness below. The old dragon did not die in Ragnarok, or if he did, something like him emerged in the new world to take his place. Because entropy, the Norse understood, is not one of the things you get to defeat permanently. It is one of the things you hold off for as long as you can by keeping the tree alive. The tree still stands. That is the ending the Norse told, or the beginning as they understood it. Because they were, in this as in everything, very honest about what they observed. That things end, but that ending is not the same as nothing. That the world before this one ended and this world was made. That this world will end and the next world will be made. That the sun before this one was swallowed and gave birth to the sun above your head. That the warmth you feel and the light you see and the ground you walk on are the products of enormous endings, and that the endings were not failures. They were preparations, what the Norse believed about the world's end and rebirth. The word Ragnarok in the oldest Norse probably means the fate of the gods, or the twilight of the gods. Gotterdammerung, as the later German tradition translated it. The gods' doom, the divine ending, the last act of the cosmic drama. What is remarkable about it is not the destruction. Every mythology eventually arrives at an ending. What is remarkable is that the Norse knew the ending was coming, built their gods with that knowledge embedded in them, and then made the ending into a beginning. They did not flinch from the knowledge that everything finite ends. They flinched from nothing. The cosmos they built is not a comfortable one. Its gods are mortal. Its world tree is being gnawed from below. Its sun is being chased by a wolf that will eventually catch her. Its most beloved god will be killed by a mistletoe, dart guided by a blind hand. Its order, that precarious, beautiful, costly order that Odin spent his entire existence trying to maintain, will end. And they told this story to their children at night beside their fires in the long, dark winters of the north. Not as a horror story, as an honest account. The Norse believed that what you do in a world that ends is the same as what you do in a world that doesn't end. You build, you love, you fight for the things worth fighting for. You face what comes toward you with your weapon in your hand and your name on your tongue and the knowledge acknowledge that the outcome was never entirely in your control, and that this changes nothing, that it never changed anything, that the quality of a life is not measured by whether you won in the end, but by what you did while you were still in it. Odin knew Ragnarok was coming. He built Valhalla anyway. Thor knew he would die of the serpent's poison. He went out to fight the serpent anyway. Tyr knew what it would cost him to put his hand in the wolf's mouth. He put it there anyway. The Norse did not believe in certainty of survival. They believed in the irreducible importance of the attempt. They believed that the universe was paying attention to how you faced it, and that the facing mattered more than the outcome. This is the gift of the Norse cosmological tradition. Not comfortable reassurance, not the promise that goodness will be rewarded and evil punished, and the story will end with the right people safe, but something more durable than reassurance. The idea that existence itself is enough, that to have been alive in a world like this, to have loved people and built things and faced enemies and found beauty, is already extraordinary, and that the fact of its ending does not diminish that extraordinary quality, but concentrates it, makes it glow. Baldur will rise in the new world. The sun's daughter will rise. The golden gaming pieces will be found again in the field where the battle was, and the gods who survived will sit and look at each other and begin. There is a new morning in the Norse story. It is always there, on the other side of whatever ending comes, through the long dark of the Fimbul winter and the flood and the fire, a green earth, a new sun, a world washed clean and ready. You do not have to earn your way to it. You only have to remain yourself while you travel through the dark. You have come a long way tonight, wanderer, from the void before the beginning, through the making of the world and the naming of the 9 realms, and the sacrifices of a god who loved wisdom more than comfort, through the thunder and the trickster and the great heart goddess of love and war, through the wolf on his island and the serpent in the deep, and the 3 women at the base of the tree who weave without ceasing, through the long shadow of the ending and the first light of the world beyond it. The Norse believed that the universe was brave, that it had looked at its own ending and decided to be magnificent anyway. I believe they were right. Let that settle in you now. The green earth of the new world, the new sun rising, Baldur incandescent, walking again. The tree still standing, its roots still in the 3 realms, the squirrel still running between the eagle and the dragon, because some things about the universe never change. Let the 9 worlds fade gently around you. Let Asgard's golden halls dim. Let the branches of the world tree settle in the wind. Let the voices of the Norse, those people of ice and fire and brief warm hearths between, let them fall quiet now, their stories told, their word kept. You are warm. You are safe. The new world is already growing on the other side of the dark. Sleep well, wanderer.